And now, ladies and gentlemen,
Put your thumbs up and say it's Tickety Boo.
Tickety Boo.
Tickety Boo, Tickety Boo, everything's Tickety Boo.
Tickety Boo, son. Tickety Boo.
Tickety Boo.
Hello and welcome to Tickety Boo. I'm back with Ian and Iona, and today I want to ask you something. Have you ever caught yourself mid-reaction, the way you snapped or shut down or handled something and thought, that's not me, that's my mum or my dad? Today we're talking about something that can feel a little bit unsettling. What happens when you realise you've been living inside behaviour patterns that you didn't choose? This resonates with me absolutely massively, especially as I'm a bit older now. I can see traits that I have inherited and not created. Please tell me I'm not alone in this.
Oh,
absolutely not.
You're not alone. There's been so many times I've caught myself going, "Oh my god, like that's just like my mum," or "That's just like so and so." Particularly, it was really noticeable in my parenting, the good, the bad, and the ugly. It's like, oh my gosh, like that's when I've caught myself where it's really obvious. Like, or when I say something that I know like doesn't feel natural, but I'm like, that's exactly what so and so would have said in my family.
What about you, Ian?
Definitely.
Yeah?
Yeah, loads of behaviour patterns are the same. Well, I definitely reflect the way that my dad was with me in quite a few instances, right. and I sort of suddenly think, oh, right, okay.
Do you ever hear like parents or siblings in yourself though, in some of the things you say or the way you'll say things or the way you'll behave in situations?
More so used to. I've kind of changed a bit now.
Have you?
Definitely.
Yeah.
In my younger years, certainly when my kids were younger as well.
What I noticed is growing up in an environment with a parent that didn't have the ability to control emotion, could go from sort of there to there pretty damn quick. I've noticed in certain situations I can replicate that and I can hear that person in my responses, or afterwards I'll be like, God, that's just like that.
Yeah.
And I immediately creates a feeling inside of me that I don't want to be or become that person. But in the moment, it doesn't happen very often. You know, we're talking a handful of times a year, but afterwards you're like, I can see where that's come from, and it's definitely something of I don't want to be part of me moving forwards in life.
Yeah. It's a learned unconscious behaviour or response or pattern, whether it's a family that, or a particular parent, or it can be our peers. You know, we don't talk about our feelings, or they can be controlling, or a very hands-off parenting, or shouting parenting, or and also there's good traits that we adopt, so they're not all bad, but it's in those realizations, because it's an unconscious pattern that we catch ourselves in, instead of trying to take when we're consciously, as Ian said, changing some of the behaviours that he recognised. That's a conscious choice.
Yeah. What about then? I've got to be careful how we do this, but when we go back into family unit or certain friendship groups.
No throwing anybody under the bus.
No. When you step into that moment, you start to do things differently. You revert back to a type or an identity because that audience recognise you from that identity. Does that kind of make sense with you, what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. And I saw that so much when my mum and her sisters, so my aunts, so there's 4 sisters, when they were going through their parents' house, they all resort to the same type, you know, who was the eldest and the youngest, and who, it was so interesting to watch. Like, they fall back into those patterns, and these are like fully grown women who've got all their own children and grandchildren, and you would just see it. They just fall into that pattern, the recognised pattern, and how they even interact with each other.
Obviously, and I'm interested, you've got quite a big, you know, siblings, brothers and sisters. In that, you know, in your brothers and sisters, are you able to sort of see the roles and identities that each individual sort of fell into in sort of like a hierarchy, and where you were in that position and how that maybe continues to play out at times today?
Definitely, it's not the same as it was. But
Yeah.
my older brother always assumes a role of protector. It's not so much needed anymore, but that's always his natural role. So he's sort of naturally the head of the family.
Yeah.
I'm kind of the carer that sort of,
The compassionate one.
yeah, and tries to link everything and be, tries to
Yeah.
look out for everybody. Not that the others aren't, but these are sort of naturally, I want to look after everybody. He wants to protect everybody. Then you've got my sisters in their roles, and yeah, we definitely do fall back into those roles.
Yeah, I know I do. Like when I get back together with family, I don't choose to. Part of me just starts to shift across, and I feel different and I act different. Some of which I'm fine with, some of it I'm not, because I think part of me becomes a little bit too passive and will tolerate what I wouldn't tolerate in other areas. That's because part of me, very long time ago, learned to keep the peace in certain situations, and that in everyday life, in most of my life, I don't need to adapt that role, and I'm actually doing a lot of work on that to sort of recognise it and deal with it, because I don't think it's good for me. It's good for them.
Yeah.
It's not good for me.
Yeah.
And I don't like that role of being the peacekeeper or keeping things as they are. So I'm the oldest of two. So you naturally, which is cool, and I don't have a problem with it, you fall into that I'm the head of the family
Yeah.
kind of thing, which is cool. I don't have a problem with that. But what I have a problem with is the unconscious expectations that come from the family, which is normally like, there's a disaster, you need to fix it. We've decided not to involve you in it until it's now a crisis, but now we're going to involve you in it. Go fix the crisis.
Yeah.
And then when you don't deliver or you don't step up, there's mood shifts or criticism or sulking.
Yeah. We definitely get that. So, like I said, I don't really want to throw any certain names, but then there's always a level of, not always, but there tends to be a level of manipulation that now, as a grown adult, I wouldn't let somebody in my house manipulate me like that. But then I go back to within that sort of family environment, and I'm watching this manipulation take place, and I'm just letting it go.
Yeah.
But within my house, there's absolutely no way that would be the case.
Yeah.
That makes no sense to me. But
that's why I've had this conversation, because a lot of people struggle, but they don't realise that, like, you step into this environment, it's like another bit of software underneath the surface old programming tries to boot up and play. So for me, in my dynamic, there was a lot of conflict avoidance and keeping the peace. So I kind of become like the, Kofi Annan United Nations of the family, trying to keep all the warring factions apart whilst being utterly miserable myself. And it's almost like nobody ever writ it, but there's this rule book, that's the way it is and that's the way it stays, and it doesn't change. What about you? I mean, obviously, you've got brothers, and do you see your role in it, or is it very different?
Being the eldest, I was always the one who should know better, but I looked after my brothers.
Right.
And so with also starting to take care of other people's needs, I know the trigger when I was 8, and I put everybody else first. And so when it comes to my brothers, it was very much, they find me bossy. But it's actually,
I don't believe that for a moment.
Surely not.
No.
But it was because that was like, I had to look after them, and I took on that role. And so, I definitely have a very strong character strength in that area. I can get things done. So I've had to learn to not be a dictator with it, which is definitely a behaviour of my father, was very much an authoritarian father.
So do you think that when you're in that role, is that you operate in the conditioning that came from your dad?
Yeah, my dad was much more the authoritarian. My mum very much was free range. And then I was left in my dad's home to look after my brothers. So that was definitely, so it was I was taught to take care of them and protect them. and then that's carried on. I mean, even when I got married, my stepdad stood up and called me a little general, and everybody there laughed because, you know, a wedding, there was like 100 odd people in the room at that point, and everybody found it funny because everybody knew that part of me. Not that I'm a mean general, but I've been I am a little general.
But I
get it done.
I can totally see that in you, I actually think it's an endearing quality. I think it's really good, especially in a team dynamic like we are. I see the general, but I also see the free range version of you as well. I see both of those identities play out, and it's what I see from the outside with you is like, I'm in this role, right, we're doing this, let's get it done. And then you're like, right, I'm off and I'm just going to over here. And I think it's really nice that you can see both of those and you can honor them both.
I definitely I have characteristics of both, and I've had to learn to relate to and release some of the more negative authoritarian aspects, and also being too free range and just sitting back and like saying, throwing your hands in the air, what the hell. So I'm trying to use the good qualities of both of those characteristics and have that balance. But I mean, I was definitely, and I can see them very, very, very vivid in my parenting when I've had some major parenting fails. Like I can go, oh yeah, I got that from my mum. Oh yeah, that's a reflection of my dad. Most of that's why it's really been obvious.
I'm interested to know, when you look at your family unit, can you see any one member of more of any one member of family in yourself than others?
Ooh.
The reason I asked the question is obviously, it's my dad left when I was very young, so I didn't really have a male role.
Oh, that's interesting.
Model in the family unit. So obviously, mum was like, the primary caregiver. Dad was around, but not a lot. And so I didn't really have a reference point on how to be a guy. They generally came from not good role models around me. But what I did watch with my mum was hardworking, professional. And I like to think I've picked up some of those traits. But I also picked up some of the not dealing with emotions well, not communicating, shutting down, those kind of traits. And when I know I'm not doing well, I can see where that has my conditioning, the part of my life where I was conditioned to be like that, if that kind of makes sense.
No, makes perfect sense.
And that's why I asked the question, like, can you see like things?
I can. A lot of my memories, going back to my parents, would be with Dad. He had very different versions of him between having young kids and then having grandkids. He was a completely different guy through that. But when we were younger, he was always at work. We come from a big family. Money was a bit scarce, or money was very scarce. So he used to work sometimes 36-hour shifts, and we kind of had to figure it out ourselves. So a lot of my examples came from my older brothers because we were figuring it out, and we certainly didn't get it right, not all the time. I mean, as it goes, me and my brothers were all pretty similar. Or me and two of my brothers we're very different people, but we're very similar. But going back to your question, if I could see myself in any of them, it would be my older brother, because that's kind of how we figured it out together when mum and dad were at work. And that's not a criticism of mum and dad. It was just they did what they did with what they knew at the time. We're a completely different generation, so we're working with a whole different batch of information.
So true.
Totally, I mean, when we were young in the 70s, kids were seen and not heard. And
That's true, yeah.
And then by the sort of 2000s, when Dad had grandkids, it was a completely different story. So.
I think the most important thing is that, this is not about blaming. Far from it, actually, because your parents got it from their parents. And
got it from their parents, yeah.
But I think... we have to go, this is not my fault that I learned this, but it's our responsibility if we keep it.
Yes.
And we keep it going. And I don't think we're very good as humans are reflecting on patterns and behaviours that we have, seeing where they've come from, and sometimes it's getting very clear, sitting down with a piece of paper and really clearly defining what's going on, what are you experiencing, what's the behaviour, and what particular element do you want to change about it. I had to recognise what was going on with me and my dynamic, especially when the family came together, and I had to put a conscious effort in and do the work when I went into that environment to not fall back into my old default position, because that normally ended up with me frustrated, angry, or anxious.
Yeah.
And I had to figure out how to, I don't like the word play the game, but pivot my position in that situation and bring in boundaries. And in some cases, limit exposure.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, and with those boundaries, and there's the self-reflection, the self-responsibility.
Yeah.
Like, when am I choosing to action or not action or pivot? And I think that's actually a really great share for our audience to hear. We can choose to pivot or not.
Yeah, well, the reason I decided to do that was because time and time again I would end up in a situation, normally coming away really angry with myself that I allowed things to play out, and I'm like, I've done it again. Every time I say I'm not going to do it again, and there I am doing it again. And this is, no one's listening. It's me berating me, getting frustrated. And it's like, okay, well, you're the problem then. They're not going to change, or you're not communicating with them. So you're the problem in this issue. You've got to shift
You're
your
the common
position.
denominator in the whole situation.
And I think that, you have to, certainly for me, you've got to kick yourself enough times in the shin till you wake up and go, sort it out.
Yeah.
Figure it out. And dial out those things that you want.
Yep.
Or you don't want, in your life.
Well, for me, taking accountability and wanting to change was sometimes seeing the impact of my behaviours on other people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that, because I was sort of naturally centred around other people, I think my biggest thing was I didn't know how to regulate emotion properly. So I'd go from being super calm to off the chart without a lot of warning. So it wouldn't be without reason, but I'd be poked and poked and poked. And then there'd be no middle ground. It would just be straight off the chart. And it was a friend of mine, an older lady, that actually pulled me up on this and says, people absolutely love you, but they don't like that side of you. And that angriness was my expression of my frustration. But that was definitely something that impacted me, because I was very much a people pleaser. So when I saw my impact of my behaviour on other people, that was what was actually a slap in the face for me.
I think what this stuff does, or certainly did for me, was as an adult, I was walking around with little boy's emotions.
Yeah.
Yep.
In an adult life.
Well, I was thinking that when I was saying what I was saying. So I go from that frustrated little boy because in our house it was, my dad would do exactly the same. I'd argue back and he'd shout over you. So that was the thing.
So whoever shouts the loudest.
Whoever shouts the loudest. So at that point I'd stay quiet because I didn't want to get shouted at. Then I went through being a teenager where because I wouldn't say things, there was a bit of bullying as well, which has led to other things. But because I wouldn't speak up for myself, then I'd get frustrated and then I'd explode. I'd explode out in a very angry fashion, not proud of. And then as an adult, a bit older, you sort of start to become ashamed of what you've just done.
I can completely relate. I was the other way around. So if I spoke out, it normally there was an attack or not a pleasant response. So I learned to go the other way, shut down. So I'd shut down. I'd become conflict avoidant.
Yeah.
And that fueled all of my anxiety. And those rules that I established as that young boy, as you go into an adult life, those protective mechanisms that are at play actually cause more problem. And part of me just goes, don't bother, just let it slide, leave it be. That's easier to handle. But that's where the frustration and resentment brews and builds, and then you do end up becoming like this when the reaction comes to a situation, whoever that person is actually copying about 330 situations that have built over a period of time. And in that moment, I could hear the voice of the person that gave me all of that. Does that kind of make sense to you?
It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So I think, if you're listening to this episode, you're like, oh, God, yeah, I can definitely hear elements of that within myself. Some reflective questions for you is, what reaction in your life doesn't feel like that it belongs to you? And get it out of your head, maybe down on a piece of paper, and dive into it and start to take a look at it. And where do you shrink yourself down in life even though you don't need to anymore? Or where do you blow up in life where you don't need to? And what are you still carrying that's not yours, that can be put down, can be dropped, can be adapted? You can do it, but you've got to get in it. I mean, you've got to do the work. And that's where a lot of people end up in therapy with underlying conditions like anxiety, overwhelm, burnout, frustration, depression, because this stuff is feeding it.
Yeah.
The personality is feeding it. Great. Another good episode. Sorry, you look like you were going to say something there and I cut you off.
No, I'll let you finish up.
Right, okay. What?
Well, I was going to say, just a little nod, having grown up with you, we've sort of said about the fact that you didn't have certain role models in your life, but at the same time, there was a lot of really good role models that you did have. Largely, the people that we're still in touch with now through scouting and other social groups.
Yeah.
People that brought you on and adopted that role.
I'm glad you...
maybe your dad weren't there to do.
Totally. That was a big thing for me. I think the problem was it came late to the program, so like a lot of my belief system stuff was already established and operating under the system at that point. So yeah, scouting and those contacts that I had definitely made me a more confident, person, but the touch points from that were far outweighed by the footprint of the younger years, if you know what I mean. I could have done with a lot more of that, but I completely agree with you, and those people are still in my life to this day. And I think role models are massively important.
Yeah. Whether it's the people that you did your apprenticeship with, for us it was through scouting, those close friends,
those friendships
uncle that would take the extra time to look out for you.
Yes,
and all that kind of
there were, even though Dad was absent, there were some fantastic people that stepped up. But unfortunately for me, a lot of the collateral damage was unrecognised, unseen, and it wasn't a then problem. It was a delayed fuse problem 20 years down the line kind of thing to be looked at. But I'm glad you brought that point up, because it is a really key one. So as always, we really appreciate you listening to these episodes wherever you may be. Listen, drop us a comment, send us an email if there's a subject you would like us to cover. Let us know. If you think the podcast is great, let us know. If you think it's utter garbage, tell us. We're just here doing our thing. So whether you're on YouTube, Spotify or Apple, we massively appreciate you listening and watching, and we'll catch you in the next episode.
If you or someone close to you needs to access mental health support, please contact your GP, or if it's out with normal office hours, get in touch with NHS 24 on 111. Alternatively, contact the Samaritans on 116 123. All calls are free of charge from any phone. You can also find more support information on the Tickety Boo website, ticketyboopodcast.co.uk.